Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. And this is me conquering my Goliath because I should have reviewed this a long time ago, but I got really anxious about it. So today, I am reviewing Whispers of Stone by Allegra Pescatore. This is the sequel to Where Shadows Lie, a kind of non-traditional high fantasy series, very queer, very disabled friendly, love it. But the first book ends catastrophically, and so I was really nervous. And over the course of 2022, which was my year of rest, I couldn't bring myself to jump back into the anxiety. But 2023 is my year of growth and creativity, so we're delving in. Obviously, this is the sequel, so I'm going to be talking about a lot of the gigantic, cataclysmic plot points that happen at the end of book 1. So if you don't want to be spoiled, but you're still interested, I will have that review linked down in the description below. So let's jump in. Whispers of Stone is what I would like to call a Fallout book. I believe this is more of an archetype than we think about in a series where a book previous in a series ends so cataclysmically, so gigantically, that the next book can't help but spend most of its runtime just delving into the ramifications, investigating how is the world different now that these giant things have happened. And with book 1 ending with the death of a king and a god, it can't not look into those things. It has to think about, okay, what does it mean that the king is dead? What does that mean for succession? Because the queen is also missing, so we don't know what we're doing with that. And then the god is dead, which brings up the whole thing of you can kill a god, because no one knew that before. And so there's all of these fallout points that made for some really interesting investigations. However, that also meant that this book specifically didn't have a lot of its own plot points. Really, as far as like big shifts in the narrative, there's really only one moment I can think of, and even that is less of a big turn that the world will be different because of, and more of a conflict that could theoretically be overcome if our protagonists are smart enough about it. As a result, this book falls a little bit into that second book syndrome, where it kind of feels like it's really here to connect point A and point B as opposed to have any major plot points of its own. And I know for a lot of people that can be a really big bummer. And even I felt like, okay, it feels like we're just spinning our wheels a little bit. And part of that was due to a little bit of a struggle in the general narrative tone, because at several points, Eleanor, who is on the back foot for most of it, she was not, while being raised a princess, was not raised to be very, like, politically savvy because she was disabled, and she was basically shoved off to the side, even by her own brother, who was trying to make the country a better place, thought that, oh, just keep Eleanor out of it. So as a result, she's, like, way out of her depth here. And the narrative makes multiple points where it's almost trying to assume, like, oh, like, this is the point. Eleanor's gonna start fighting back, but then she's right back to the back foot on the very next scene. And there's kind of a couple false starts where you're like, oh, this is the moment in the book where she's, nope, no, now she's, nope. Like, it takes several false starts before you're like, okay, now Eleanor's become the political savvy badass that she needs to be to get shit done. And that kind of contributed to the wheel turning aspect. However, the point A to point B aspect of the book was actually bolstered by the significant amount of tension that the author managed to put in the book, not through mysteries, but actually through revealing mysteries, but only to the reader. There are a lot of cases in this book where things are hinted at to the characters that the reader knows. The reader knows X person is secretly alive, X person is secretly a family member or enemy or something of X person, and the actual characters don't. And so it builds up this delightful tension of, you know, this is all gonna play out eventually. You know they're gonna learn that this name is actually referring to this person and they didn't know it, like that kind of stuff. You know all of those reveals are eventually going to be made, and you're excited to find out how people are going to react, like what that moment actually is going to be. And it's a delightful way to build tension. I wish that we'd had at least one. Like, there were so many little things that were there to build anticipation. I would have preferred that we got at least one reveal, one reunion, like something to kind of tide you over until everything that's going to go down in the third book. I don't know if this is a trilogy. I'm not sure, but it definitely sets up that 18 days after the end of this book, a ton of stuff is going to go down. Fate colliding, several different people who are disparate at this point, who are at different continents at some points, all have things going down in 18 days. So there's kind of going to be a convergence point that is going to happen in a future book, but not a lot goes down in this book. However, what the author really excelled in, surprisingly, was the relationships between characters. And what I mean by that is, not only did they create a love octagon, I think, maybe 8 people, maybe more, I don't know. But the weirdest thing is that I didn't hate it, which is a freaking miracle because I don't even like love triangles half the time. And I have gone after other review books for having a protagonist that had all these possible love interests as being too protagonisty and what are you doing? But in this case, this delightfully chaotic web of romantic entanglements is interesting to me and has my investment in a way that almost no other books can. And that's for a couple different reasons. The first one being that this book has established that a lot of these characters have accepted that they are basically going to be forced to live their lives in some state of polyamory. Admittedly, it's kind of begrudging. It's not a built-in part for all of the cultures involved in this high fantasy, although there is a culture in which they traditionally have 5-person marriages. And don't think that you snuck that under the radar with me. Okay, Miss Pescatore, I know what you're thinking. I'm already trying to pick out who the 5 are going to be. I see you. But regardless, you have the nobles who have long since accepted that they are going to have to marry for political reasons, and it is very likely that they will have to have the love of their life as a mistress or a lover. And then you have the other people who know that they have other engagements or other responsibilities connected to their magic. That means that there's always going to be a person that has to be high in their life, even if they're truly in love with someone else. So it kind of built in this. Everyone's just kind of accepted that, jealously possessive monogamy just isn't functionally going to work in their world. And as a result, the love octagon of web entanglements doesn't feel as cheap because everyone else sees it, recognizes it, and is not trying to magically make it not happen, magically find a way to unwind, which is my problem with love triangles, where they built in love triangles, but the author still wants you to be on board with who the protagonist picked. No, if you did a good job in a love triangle, setting up the romances separately, someone's always going to be disappointed unless you went in polyamory. But that's beside the point. I see the possibility. There's one particular throuple I would love to see exist, but that's beside the point. The romantic entanglements here are great, and they provide a very complex web of alliances where if this person gets into trouble, different people are going to come to their aid for different reasons, even if those people all dislike each other. It creates lovely angst of intercharacter relationships that I really like. And it's just miraculous that this giant web of romantic entanglements isn't infuriating me. Very few authors can accomplish that excellent work. Now, as for the world building, I was confused. But I am often confused with high fantasy world building. So I didn't take anything off for that. Because 1, I waited a year between installments to read this, and 2, I hardly ever understand high fantasy world building. So I can't take that away from the author. That's on me. But there was a lot of political alliances, and it's very important to understand countries to the north, south, and the desert, and how this interacts, and ancient history between the gods, and there's a lot going on. So if you're someone that maybe struggles with world building, know that going in. But if you're one of those yes, give me the deep lore, you'll probably really like this one. I didn't take off a star or anything. The only reason I took off a star was because of the flow with those false starts was kind of jolting. But beyond that, even though this does suffer from second book syndrome, it does a great job. You can definitely tell that it was trying to be a second book syndrome type book. It was trying to deal with the fallout from one and build up to the next. And since it was done with purpose, I can let it go. It wasn't just to build out a trilogy farther. I do like the characters. I like the tensions. I'm really excited for the reveals that I know will be coming next. But now I'm even more nervous for the third book because now I know for a fact that giant cataclysmic shit's going down. So I'm right back to anxiety. So let's hope that I don't wait another year, because I will probably confuse myself all over again. But in general, love it. Very strange for me to love a high fantasy book this much, but when the characters are, you know, queer and disabled and super sarcastic at points, like I love it. The angst is great. Overall, I gave this book 4 stars. Highly recommend for high fantasy fans, and maybe even for non-high fantasy fans. Just, you know, prepare to be confused. I am again open to review requests. However, I'm not going to be doing too much to keep up to date with whether or not I'm open in videos, just because I can't control who watches my videos when. But if you're interested in getting a review, you can check out my review policy. That will be down in the description below. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.